Hello everyone, Christopher Beast here. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking the machine gun class. The machine gun class includes both heavy machine guns, or HMGs, and light machine guns, or LMGs. A simple example of an HMG would be the KK-62, and a simple example of an LMG would be your RPK. These guns perform so radically different that rating them together wouldn't really make a lot of sense, as their jobs in combat do not have anything to do with each other. So I will be talking about them separately. Starting with the HMGs in the game, we have to start with the worst HMG in Vigor, which is the MG3. The MG3 is beyond bad, with horrible bloom, horrible recoil, pretty awful sights, and very expensive ammo. There's really nothing that this gun does best. Well, at least that's how it seems. In terms of pure stats, though, it does have the highest rate of fire at 1,200 and is the cheapest HMG to craft. However, neither of these perks really bring the HMG to any level other than just rubbish. And really, I don't see any real situation where the MG3 is the clear choice to use. Next on the list is the PKM. While the PKM is miles better than the MG3, it is still very awful. With insane recoil that forces you to burst in 4 rounds, it's really hard to get a good handle on this gun as even an experienced player. I had a decent amount of fun with it when I was playing around with it, but that's because I'm used to bursting, and it's just not as good compared to anything else on the board when it comes to HMGs. Due to its use of 7.62 by 54, it does have a fairly fast time to kill, but it's not the fastest by any degree, as it does get beaten by both the 249 and, to a degree, the UK and VZ59s. The PKM is really, in my opinion, just a jack-of-all-trades, master of none, as it doesn't hit hard enough to be like the UK, and it doesn't fire fast enough to be like the KK-62, and instead just finds itself in a pure state of mediocrity. Next is the UK VZ59. Now this is a genuinely good HMG that has a genuine role to play. With a 2-shot kill and an 800 rate of fire, it's very clear that this weapon is the perfect long-range destruction HMG. Think like the Maxim MMG from World War I. I know it's a strange thing to think of, but that's a pretty good comparison. It is arguably, due to its sights, one of the best HMGs for long range, and when you combine its existing stats of very fast TTK and decently slow rate of fire for you to adjust mid-shooting, this makes it a very good weapon at long range. The UK is not number 1, though, as its close range and suppression capacities, it's just not very good. It is usable at close range, but not as much as one of the guns I'm going to mention in a second, and its suppression is just not very good at all. But this is definitely not a gun you should be sleeping on, and I think more people should try it out and have some fun with it. Next is the second best HMG in the game. We have the M249. And before I get into this, I am categorizing the M249 as an HMG despite it not having the weight debuff that all the other HMGs have, as it really performs much more like an HMG than an LMG. If you disagree with me, then that's really just my opinion. If this has to be categorized as an LMG, it would be the second best LMG in the game, for a lot of the reasons that I'm going to explain why it's the second best HMG. The HMG is, hands down, in terms of sheer stats, damage, and suppression, the best HMG in the game. It just is. It's one of the best at medium range with very little bloom and recoil. It has the ability to use iron sights without proning. Its iron sights are usable. Its mag size is the largest. All of these things combine to make it into a gun that's very deadly. However, the issue comes in costs. Well, yes, weapons like the UK cost far more, and the KK-62 costs around the same. You really don't need to use as much ammo in the UK as you do in the 249. The 249 is a gun that requires at minimum 160 rounds, but I've heard all the way up to 360 and even higher. That's insane, and it makes the cost of this gun way too much to justify. And when we really think about it, while yes, HMGs as a category are going to be expensive, the number 1 HMG, which I'm going to get to in a second, is just cheaper. So at the end of the day, I do have to give this number 2. If you disagree, though, and you think you can just make these costs and pay for it with your materials, that's perfectly fine. Then the 249 is the best HMG for you. But if we're going to number one, the best HMG in Vigor is the KK62. Not only is it cheaper to craft than the M249, it also does perform slightly better in close range to the 249. However, as I said, that's really the only situation where it's doing better than a 249. But this is fine, seeing as it's only slightly worse than a 249 and is far cheaper, and it's going to require, reasonably speaking, less ammo, and has single fire, which lets you use single fire suppression instead of full auto suppression. This gun really is a beast. I have to also add on top of all of this, it has a 1,100 rate of fire, which is very fast. It's the second fastest HMG in the game. I really think the KK62 is something I personally could also use as a primary gun because it also can fight on par with other weapons from other categories, which can't really be said about most other weapons in the HMG category. Moving on from HMGs, we enter into LMGs. Starting off with the worst in class for the LMG, we have the base RPK. I know a lot of people are going to disagree, but this is because a lot of people, for a while, the base RPK was the only LMG we had in the game. Then we got the ZA, and then we got the RPK 74, which are just better. The RPK does have the best suppression out of the LMGs, which if that's something you're looking for with its larger mag size and its slower rate of fire, it has very good suppression. However, it has far worse bloom and far worse rate of fire. And this just makes it slow and clunky compared to other LMGs, and really, you can't have slow and clunky if you're an LMG fighting the AR meta that exists right now. You really can't afford it, and that's why RPK is arguably the worst. Next is the ZAM72. ZAM72 improves upon the RPK in the way that it has far less bloom. However, it keeps most of that recoil. It's just much less bloom, much cleaner irons. It has a smaller mag, which is problematic, but it also does a little bit more damage. I would say overall, also, it has a bit less recoil. I forgot to mention that. Overall, the ZA is just better than the RPK, I would argue. Yes, it has a smaller mag, but it's just going to do better at handling the AR meta and a lot of other guns across the board, as opposed to the base RPK. But the ZAM72 isn't a clear better gun. The RPK-74, though, is. The RPK-74 is, while it does have the smaller mag still, has far less recoil, and while it has more bloom than the ZAM72, really, that shouldn't be a major problem, as both have very little amounts of bloom. RPK also has less sustained bloom, meaning if you get to around 10 to 12 bullets through your mag, the RPK will have less bloom than a ZA, making it better at suppression. I know this was a whole lot of things conflicting, but long story short, the RPK is the worst. The ZA is slightly better, and it's better in bloom, and the RPK is also slightly better and is better in recoil. That is my opinions about the HMG and LMG classes, which are together grouped under the machine gun class in Vigor. If you disagree, write down in the comments, but particularly in the comments today, I want to see what your guys' opinions on what LMGs and HMGs we could see in the future of the game. It's particularly on LMGs, while in HMGs we have 5 at the moment. We have, yes, 5. I'm sorry, had to double check there. LMGs, we only have 3, which for a weapon class that's very common in most games, I feel like we should have more. Whatever weapons you think could be added to this class of weapons, write them in the description and I'll give my opinions. Until next time, this has been Crystal Beast, and I hope you all enjoyed.